Have you ever felt like you were part of something much bigger than yourself? Like a story that started long before you were born. A story written in stars, promises, and footsteps across deserts? Every family has a story. But what if your story traced back not just a few generations, but all the way to a man named Abraham, to a promise made under the night sky, and to 12 tribes whose names echo through Scripture? Today, we're going to unlock one of the Bible's most enduring mysteries. What really happened to the 12 tribes of Israel? Did they disappear, as many believe? Or are their descendants still walking among us? Maybe even closer than we think? The miraculous origins of these tribes, and what they reveal about divine timing. The shocking reason why most of them vanished from history. The prophecies that speak of their return, and why that matters to you today. And finally, how your own identity may be more connected to this story than you ever imagined. Have you ever questioned your place in the world? Have you ever wondered if your story has meaning, if your life is part of something eternal? Then this video isn't just for information. It's for you. Because as we unfold this ancient journey, from Abraham to Isaac, from Jacob to the tribes, you may discover that you are also part of the promise. So get comfortable, breathe deep, and let's begin where all great stories begin, with a promise that changed the world. It's easy to take birth for granted, until you've waited for it your whole life. Imagine this. You're nearly 100 years old. Your skin is wrinkled by time, your body slower than it once was. You've lived a long life, but without a child. And your wife, Sarah? She's 90. Hope, if it ever lived here, left decades ago. And then God speaks. He says, "You will have a son. His name will be Isaac." Can you imagine the silence in that tent? The nervous laugh? The glimmer of impossible hope? Genesis 17 verse 19 records it clearly. "I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant." This wasn't just a baby. This was the first heartbeat of a divine promise. A promise that would shape the course of nations. A promise that would reach all the way to you. Think of couples today who go through years of infertility. They try everything. Diets, doctors, procedures, and prayers. And then one day, unexpectedly, even impossibly, they see 2 lines on a pregnancy test. The joy isn't just about becoming parents. It's about the restoration of hope. That's exactly what happened to Abraham and Sarah. Except this was more than just a personal dream. It was the beginning of God's plan to redeem the world. And yet, even after hearing God's promise, Sarah laughed. Not out of joy but disbelief. And God responded with a question that still echoes today. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Genesis 18 verse 14. That's not just a question for Sarah. It's a question for us. For anyone who's ever said, "It's too late. I've made too many mistakes. God wouldn't choose someone like me." But here's the truth. God often begins his biggest miracles where hope has expired. That's how he works. That's how Isaac came into the world. Never count yourself out. Not when God is still writing the story. Because his promises may come slow, but they never come late. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. That miracle baby Isaac would grow up to become a test of faith himself. Not just a symbol of promise, but the very proof of Abraham's obedience. In our next part, we'll walk beside father and son, as they climb a mountain together, carrying not just wood, but the weight of trust. The child of promise had arrived. Isaac was here, laughter in human form. And for a while all seemed right. The silence was broken. The tent was full. The stars above Abraham didn't seem so distant anymore. But then came the unthinkable. One quiet morning, God spoke again. "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and offer him as a sacrifice." Genesis 22 verse 2. Did God really ask Abraham to give up the very child he had promised? The miracle that had taken a century to arrive? You're Abraham. You've waited a lifetime for this boy. You've watched him laugh, grow, ask questions. And now God is asking you to lay him on an altar. Would you go? Would you tell your wife? Would you say yes and mean it? Genesis doesn't record a protest. No argument, just obedience. So Abraham rose early in the morning. Let's pause here. Most of us won't be asked to place our children on an altar. But many of us will face something equally painful. The moment when God asks for something we love deeply. Career we built. A relationship we prayed for. A dream we've carried for years. And he says, "Do you trust me with it? Even if I ask you to give it up?" That's not about cruelty. It's about trust. God wasn't testing Isaac. He was revealing Abraham's heart and teaching all generations afterward that faith without surrender is incomplete. And then it happened. Abraham raised the knife, and in that trembling silence, heaven spoke. "Do not lay your hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God." Genesis 22 verse 12. In the thicket nearby was a ram, provision at just the right moment. Here's the lesson. Sometimes God waits until the last second, not to scare us, but to show us that He is the God who provides. Not a second too early, not a second too late. And so Isaac lived. But more than that, Abraham's faith came alive. This moment sealed the covenant. It wasn't just about receiving a promise anymore. It was about being trusted with it. And Isaac, he wasn't just the child of promise. He became the bridge between divine vision and human obedience. In the next part, we'll watch Isaac's son, Jacob, as he grows up in the shadow of this legacy. A boy with ambition, a heart full of hunger, and a name that means heel grabber. Narrator reflective, sincere tone. If Isaac was the child of promise, then Jacob was the child of paradox. From the very beginning, his life was a struggle. Even before he was born, Scripture tells us, "Two nations are in your womb, and the older shall serve the younger." Genesis 25 verse 23. Two boys, twin brothers. Esau came first, strong, red-haired, a hunter. Jacob came next, grasping his brother's heel. His very name meant supplanter, one who grabs what isn't his. But this isn't just sibling rivalry. This is a man destined for greatness, but unsure how to get there. Have you ever felt that tension? Like you're called to something, but the path to it feels messy, unclear, even dishonest? That was Jacob's life. He wanted the blessing. He craved the inheritance. And with the help of his mother Rebekah, he tricked his blind father Isaac into blessing him instead of Esau. It's a scene full of tension. Jacob dresses in goat skin. He mimics his brother's voice. He lies to his father's face. And still, God allows it. Wait, why would God bless a deceiver? Because he saw something deeper in Jacob. Not perfection, but hunger. Jacob wanted what God had promised, even if he didn't yet know how to receive it the right way. And maybe that's closer to us than we think. How many times have we reached for destiny with trembling hands? How often do our insecurities lead us to control, manipulate, or take shortcuts to secure the outcome we fear we'll lose? But God doesn't give up on Jacob. He leads him into a long season of refinement. Jacob runs. He leaves home. And along the way, he dreams of a ladder, angels ascending and descending between heaven and earth. At the top stands God. And in that moment, God reaffirms the promise. "I am the Lord. The land where you lie I will give to you and your descendants." Genesis 28 verse 13. Even in exile, God reminds Jacob, "You may be running, but you are not forgotten." Here's the truth. God often meets us when we least expect it. Not in the palace, but in the wilderness. Not when we feel worthy, but when we feel most lost. And it's there that Jacob takes his first step. Not just as a runaway, but as a man in covenant. This is only the beginning of Jacob's journey. Ahead lies heartbreak, hard work, and family conflict. But in the end, something beautiful will happen. He'll receive a new name, and that name, Israel, will mark a nation forever. But before we get there, we need to meet the 12 sons who would carry that name forward. Each one, born from complexity, yet chosen for destiny. Jacob's story, like so many of ours, didn't get easier once the promise was made. In fact, it got messier. He found love. And then he was tricked. He worked 7 years for Rachel, only to wake up next to her sister, Leah. Have you ever had a moment like that? When you thought you had finally arrived, only to realize you had been deceived? Jacob did. And yet he stayed. He worked another 7 years. And from that complex web of marriage, rivalry, pain, and longing, came 12 sons. These weren't just children. They were the foundations of a nation.